agricultural and livestock at Owasso, and had a great time. So, thanks for the introduction, Jack. Always good to tell everybody my background before I get started. Jack asked me to come today to share with you about National Chapter. Obviously a little concerned over the reduction from 3 stars to 2 stars, and that kind of started the conversation. Well, let's talk about it. I'm going to spend a very short amount of time talking about the new application because we just finished a revision cycle. I don't know if you're aware, but every 5 years we revise. We'll actually start the process again in 2 years. So about the time we get one done, we start it again. I don't know, when I was teaching, I didn't really understand that process. All of a sudden there'd be an application like, okay, you're wrong. But just to give you a little background on that piece of it, we actually have quite a bit of a process. So we don't really make this stuff up in the building. It takes us 3 years to revise any application, any event, or anything like that. We started in 2014 surveying the teachers that had participated in the program for the previous 3 years. So some of you may have participated in that survey. Some of you may have deleted it because you didn't have time. That's okay too. And then the people that were involved, of course, we actually have a revision committee. We have the awards and recognition advisory committee. And then we have the program staff that help us deliver it every year. So all of these different people are involved in this process. And then for the first time, we actually used the National Quality Program Standards to inform how this application was going to look. So you're going to see a whole new section that you've not seen before. So no, I wanted to kind of start with that because there's always questions about, well, how do we get this new application? Who gets to decide that stuff? We don't make it up in the building. We actually involve teachers, we involve state staff. In other programs, we're going to involve people from outside of industry. This one, not so much, although we did involve some people who are really into strategic planning. If you were like me, when somebody says strategic planning, I just want to throw up. So it's just one of those things I had to do at school, and I hated it. But it is a necessary process in the business world. And so bringing that piece into the national chapter is helping our students apply this to the real world. Right now, you'll see a little bit of difference. Before in the divisions, you had student development, chapter development, and community development. The new divisions are in blue: growing leaders, building communities, and strengthening agriculture. If you're familiar with the National FFA strategic plan, those are the areas that we focus on. It bled over into the national chapter application with all those people involved. They thought those were really great. So you'll see a lot of things that look the same. We kind of compressed the student leadership and chapter development into growing leaders. So those all look pretty much like they did before. Building communities with our community development, there's only one change in that one. And then strengthening agriculture, those are all pretty new as well. So hopefully, as we move through the application, you'll see that it's a little bit more, it flows a lot better, I think, with our current mission and vision that we have with FFA. For those of us that have been around for a while, we remember BOAC. Anybody remember BOAC? Besides me? Guys? Okay, a couple of us are older. We heard that call. It seemed like every time we would talk about national chapter at various meetings around the country, the older veteran teachers in the room would say, bring back BOAC, which was building our American communities. It had a lot of safety components and those types of things. So strengthening agriculture kind of came from that. It doesn't look like the old BOAC program, but you'll see there's safety in there, there's advocacy, literacy, all of those things were incorporated in that old program. So structure-wise, we got a few name changes and really pushing together some categories. The presentations are changed a little bit. Those of you that have had models of innovation, models of excellence, you'll notice they're a little bit different. And I highlighted the differences in yellow. So what was on the left was what it was prior to this 2017 rotation, and the new stuff on the right in yellow. So before it was outstanding middle school, we've changed it to middle school model of excellence just to reflect the high school, which is a complete program. Could be middle plus high school or just complete high school. So they've separated those out. Instead of model innovation, now it's premier chapter. So you've got those growing leaders, strengthening agriculture, building communities that I showed you a second ago. Then when you get to, you've gone through the SIFT virtually at July, you've made it to the finals, you're one of those premier chapters, or what we call models of innovation, then the students have presentations that they make at National Convention to be judged in one of those categories. So you'll see the changes are now instead of 10 minutes, the students have 8 minutes to make the presentation. Those that had put on the contest for years said 10 was just too much, give them 8. And then they're going to focus on an activity rather than the entire division of activities. So before, when they were making their presentations, if they were selected as a model of innovation in student development, they had 10 minutes to talk about all the activities in that category. So now we've narrowed it 8 minutes, but they're going to pick one activity in that to talk about rather than all of them. So it helps focus the students. It's not near as broad. It's more focused. And you and I know that kids can get really excited about a single activity and not like the other activities that are in there. Maybe they didn't participate or it wasn't that great of a thing that they thought. So it gives them the opportunity to grab which one they like the best. And then the models of excellence down at the bottom. Again, we just changed it to models of excellence for middle school. They still get the 10 slides. Now there's 3 presenters, because we've all had that episode where one gets sick right before convention or decides they want to go play ball or whatever and they don't get to convention. So now you got an opportunity to have 3 instead of 2. And so if that one kid leaves, you still got 2 instead of 1. And then their presentation, they gave them a few extra minutes. They got 15 instead of 10. So that was all feedback that was taken from students, it was taken from teachers, it was taken from the people that put on the contest, and they decided that this was the best way to go. Questions about that piece? They will know. They'll know which area that they're focused in, whether it's going to be building communities, strengthening our leaders, and then they get to pick the one out of the 3 that are in the application to really focus on.
They didn't know that one that was flagged national
So like when we got it 2 years ago, it said like this activity is
Yes.
what, so that's the one you need to highlight.
That would be my suggestion, yeah. Find those 3 kids that are really into that one activity and make sure that they're really able to hammer it home good in the time frame that they have. Other questions? I never made it this far for national chapter, I'll be honest. So I never made it to the premier chapter for Models of Excellence. So I want to share with you real quick resources. These are all electronic. There are really none of y'all here today. I didn't print all those. That'd be way too much. We would save a few trees. So all of them are electronic. You'll find them on the national chapter homepage, which I'll show you. There's a POA resource page and a revision page, which, once all the revisions are in, we probably won't have that page anymore. But all of them, you've got a change summary that I just showed you, except way more depth. You've got the handbook, which is 35 pages long, just so you know. Application directions. I thought about printing you an application worksheet. It's 25 pages long. It's for you to handwrite. The kids can write in it. And I stress, this is a kid application. This is not a teacher application. Okay? Stress that. Because I know from personal experience that as a teacher, we tend to take a lot of ownership in this, and we want to be the ones to fill it out. And I'll be honest with you, the best times I ever performed at the national level is when I let the kids do it instead of me. So just stress that. The worksheet's for them to print off and they can fill it in by hand. And then they go to the computer and type it in. So that's the worksheet. Program overview, you've got your division and quality standards, program activities, resources, and then the POAs are all broken out. So we still have a lot of those resources. They're available. They're all on the national chapter homepage. Okay? Let me show you that one real quick. I can remember which one to do this. So on the home page, forgive me, I can't talk and type at the same time. So on the home page, if you go to participate, there's awards and degrees. You'll notice the drop-down box over here. There's national chapter. So on that screen, over here on the right-hand side is where you're going to find all of those things and more. Right now we've got up the 2016 results. They'll be there until next year. We swap those out. They'll be leaving there for a year. And then you've got the application, the directions, the worksheet. And then down here you've got the rubrics. All right there on the national chapter. So that's where everything is located, fast and easy to get to. Okay? Now the next question is always, well, where's the application? When you click on application, it'll take you there. And you can look at it, but if, let's say you're in a hurry, you can get there from your toolbox. Right here in the instructor toolbox, you have a little chevron at the top right hand corner. You click instructor, and then you head to the application center, right here under application hub. Now I know you all use AET, so it is possible to get there through AET. I don't use AET, so I have no idea how to do that. If staff, if there's somebody you want to come show them how to do that from AET, that's great.
I'd love to because I
Great.
love AET.
And incidentally, last week at NAAE, I didn't get to go to the workshop. It was the same time as mine, but Roger Hennegriff that owns AET, he was doing a workshop on their new POA tool. So they've got strategic planning and POA in AET for you the students to input it there, and it flows into the application. So if you're using the calendar and all those types of things in AET, I'm sure it's real easy to flow it into the application.
Nina obviously does have an AET account that she doesn't know about because she's already logged in and signed in as her. Yeah. Don't ask me how that works, but yeah. Okay, so just click over on reports, FFA awards, degree, application, so on and so forth. Choose. Wherever the.
Right there with the ends for national chapter.
You have one,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. But if you're adding a new one, you would add it from this menu
Right.
item.
I have, thankfully, I have
Appreciate
access
your-
to. All right, so apparently if you're logged in FFA.org, it goes straight to your AET account.
Not necessarily.
So, good to know this morning. When you click on, I'm going to do this one first. When you click on the application, whether you're coming from FFA.org or coming from AET, it doesn't matter. To start the application, you notice over here on the left-hand side, not a lot of choices. Okay? This is Form 1, where you list the activity in each one of the indicators. Okay? The cover page is the same as virtually every application we have now. But the one unique thing here is you can actually assign students to work on this. Okay? From their FFA.org account or their AET account, you can assign students. And I told you, this is a student application, this is not a teacher application. You can assign as many students to work on it as you want. If each of your committee chairmen is in charge of their section of the POA, you can assign them to work on it. One thing to note, they cannot work on the same page at the same time on two different computers. Okay? The system doesn't know which ones to listen to. So if one enters, exits, saves it, and moves on, and the other student's still working on it, nothing gets saved and nothing jives. Okay? So just know that you can't let them work on the same page at the same time. That's the one thing that they
So
could
this
do.
thing tracking what students are on there and it's just keeping a report.
In your the student's account on AET, I believe it does track, but as far as the application goes, no. So you won't necessarily know who does.
Process, they gonna check all that.
Check what? What student did entry? No. We give paper copies, we can't do that. We can't track student entry. Nor can we track teacher entry. Alright, so this is Form 1. Goes through. Here's the quality indicators I was telling you about that are related to the Natural Quality Program Standards. This is a whole new piece. Okay? So the students go through, answer honestly. Of course, in the state of Oklahoma, all students are FFA members. They get mark of 5 and it goes through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. And then, of course, you guys have told us you love the summary pages on applications, so we've created a summary page for this as well. So you can go through and see which ones you've got, what you've met, what you haven't met, what scores you've got on your PISA. So that's a really cool feature that's new this year with the new application. And I'm going to go back, because I went through and put a whole bunch of stuff in one, so it'll be fast. So on the indicators, I just went through and checked randomly various, what do you see? I did 5-3, 5-3, 5-3, on all of them through. Once I get finished with that page, you'll notice it asks me, do you have all 15 items on Form 1 filled in? Yes. And if you'll notice, I'll go back to that screen, you can't just type random stuff, because that's what I did first. I just did it on the keyboard and filled in his face. It knew that I didn't have real words there. I had to type a whole sentence with a period in order for it to record it. So kids won't be able to just randomly enter stuff. They'll actually have to type a sentence for it to accept it. I thought that was kind of interesting that it was smart enough to know that. The other piece of that, on that rubric, you have to get a minimum of 51 points for it to open up Form 2. That is brand new. So when your students are entering in 5, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1 on that page, and it's still not opening up Form 2, you can guarantee it's not totaling 51 points. So then it's time to have that discussion. If we can't score 51 points, are we really a quality chapter? And it's really not that hard to get 51, honestly. If you'll read through them, if the students are answering honestly through each one of those indicators, it's not that hard to get 51 points. At least I didn't think it was very hard. And then you can see the scores through here. Points possible on the left, points earned on the right. So these are all of them listed out that were in that rubric 1 through 13. Does the chapter conduct regularly scheduled chapter meetings? I mean, these are all things that I'm sure you all are doing already. If you're not, again, it begs the question, are we a quality chapter? What do we need to change to become a quality chapter the next year? Questions so far on that? 'Cause that's pretty new. Like it? Dislike it? Y'all are a tough group this morning. Not enough coffee driving in? All right, so let's get to the meat of the application. As opposed to the old Excel form, I happen to like this a whole lot better. First and foremost, because after you type something, it saves it. Unlike Excel, if you close it out without saving, it's all gone. Or if your computer blinks, it's gone. This is going to save it every time you type something into a line. I want to point out that you've got a little question mark here that actually gives you what's in the handbook piece. Okay, so if you have the handbook open on one screen or print it off and the students have got it laying next to them on the table and they can flip through the paper pages, or they can hover over the little green question mark. And this fits with proficiencies and other applications that we have now too. So that's a great feature. Also, the little blue ribbon. That's another piece of information. Tells the students, and this is exactly what's on the rubric. Description clearly explains the purpose and reason the chapter is implementing the activity. What is the purpose? Where did it take place? All those types of things. So they can flip back and forth on the electronic. If you're like me, I tend to like the paper. But here with the electronic piece, they can also look at it very quickly. So it looks very similar. They're going to indicate the name of the activity, and I believe it says just choose a simple activity. It doesn't have to have a cute name or anything like that, although a lot of people like to have those cute names. Jared, when you were judging, did the cute name mean anything to you?
Yeah, Katie was going to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
It almost doesn't help to a point. I mean, you want something to catch your eye a little bit, but sometimes you read it and it's too goofy, you can't figure out what it is. And when you're judging them, you want to look at the title in about 3 seconds and move on. So.
Okay. Unlike Agri-Science Fair, where you need a catchy title or something like that, for those of you that do that one. So I can, from my experience of judging before I came on staff, it's kind of the same thing. I read the title, some of them I laughed at, some of them I didn't, I moved on. It really didn't influence the judging at all. So then they're going to pick the standard area that they're in, and then they're going to write their description. So tips on description pieces for them. Because I know that part, and green tells you how many character counts, and as you type, it counts down what's left. So unlike the Excel spreadsheet that you had to print and figure out if it all fit in there or not, no more of that. When your character count runs out, it's going to be in red. It's going to tell you you've run out of space and it's not going to print. But activity description. Katie?
I mean, I would definitely put as much detail as you possibly can in there. Instead, like, I would see some, even, we got to judge here at the state level and at nationals, and at both, we would see them like, we hosted an annual canned food drive. You still have a lot of space left to tell me, like, what did you do special about that? Was it just a regular old canned food drive, or did you partner up with somebody? Be very detailed, so that way we kind of know ahead of time what we're going to be looking for.
Okay.
Sure. Talk a little bit about these.
Yes, that'd be great.
Well, Jenna Jensen put together, she actually pulled some Oklahoma. Oh, you got that?
Yep, I'll pass them out where you're talking.
She actually went back and pulled some 2014 apps from Oklahoma, compared them 3-star from 14 that were 2-star in 16 to try to look at some differences from specific Oklahoma chapters. And I don't know, they just have specific chapter names still on them. So that wasn't me, that was Jenna Jensen. So.
No, I took them off. You've got the copy.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to embarrass anybody.
So what she put on here I thought was really good, because now we can see some specific things that this was good, this was not so good. On the descriptions, the overall theme I got from judging was, you want a description that actually describes specifically what you're doing. Like there's one on here, the first one under description, student 2 states that the purpose of this activity was to develop a healthy lifestyle skill everyone can enjoy. That's not going to score very high because we don't know what the activity is. And if a judge is judging that, and you're going through these whole steps, the activity description is probably the most important, because it establishes in the judge's mind what the activity is, what you're trying to accomplish, before you move on to your goals. So that's got to be very descriptive. It doesn't have to be cute. Again, it just needs to say specifically what you're doing. And there's another one on there talking about the 3rd grade reading deal and how that's an issue, but it doesn't really say what you're going to do for the issue. So it's just like anything else we do. There's a problem, we've established this is a problem, or this is an issue, or this is somewhere that needs help. Here's what we're going to do to fix it, and then you set up your goals right after that to kind of help with your description.
I know, I always had my English teacher read through it before I submit. And she would find editing errors, grammar, and those types of things. But I highly recommend you also have somebody read through it who knows nothing about your chapter. Find someone who doesn't know what you do, and see if it makes sense. Because Jenna pretty much pointed out things that, as a reader, we only know what's on the page as a judge. We can't make assumptions, we can't make guesses, none of that kind of stuff comes into play. When we're working with kids filling out applications, we know the activity so well that sometimes, we don't realize we're filling in the blanks in our head as we read through it. So find somebody to read through it who can't fill in the blanks for you. And that'll help identify some of these things that Jenna went through and said, like the reader doesn't know exactly what the activity is until we read the title and goals. I know as a judge, when I was going through it, don't make me bounce back and forth during the different sections of the application trying to figure. Because if Katie and I were kind of laughing this morning when she came in, on day 3 of reading 5,000 applications, I'm not taking the time to look for things. The first day or so, I might be a little forgiving, and I'm going to spend a little more time. By day 3 out of 5, I'm numb and I'm tired. I don't want to hunt for things. So don't make me bounce back and forth between the goals and the title to figure out what the activity is. So speaking of goals, the old application, you had a section for goals, and you put 4 goals in that one little box. We've broken them out. So the old application said 3 to 4 goals. How many did everybody put in? 4. It's all right. We're going to give you 4 goals to fill in now. Okay? You're doing it anyway, so now we've broken it out for you. So you've got goal 1. They get to talk exclusively about goal 1. So you got a lot more space, 225 characters to talk about goal 1 instead of cramming all 4 into that one box now. Then on that, we've got plan of action and outcome evaluated and reported. So we've broken it out. So you've got goal 1, and the students scroll down, they've got goal 2, goal 3, and then the 4th goal we actually identified. We want you to tell us how it's advancing leaders. So most of you are already doing that anyway, but we're going to be specific with that 4th goal one and ask you to tell us how is it advancing leaders among your students. So those, your officers, your committee chairmen, they need to think about that as they're formulating the activities in the POA. How is this going to advance leaders? Because it's got to be one of our goals in the national chapter application. And if you hover it over, responds clearly, states the purpose of the activity, benefit had on leaders, community, or agriculture. So that's a new little feature there that I wanted to make sure to point out. And really, if we think about our POA, that's why we're doing it, isn't it? That's our ulterior motive for having the students do a POA FFA is to advance them as leaders. Whether it's them personally, whether it's the chapter, or leaders in our communities and part of agriculture advocating. So we just drawn it out and highlighted it more. There's questions about that one. Y'all are going to get home, you're going to have all kinds of questions on that. You're going to call your state staff.
You got an example of advancing leaders?
No, because I mean, it's whatever fits the activity that you're doing. You know, if you're doing one of the most common ones that you'll see on almost nearly every application is the children's barnyard, right? That's the really one that shows up everywhere. So how would a children's barnyard advance leaders? And again, looking at the description, leaders in our community or agriculture. So you tell me, what would that goal look like for your students that are doing the barnyard, the petting zoo?
Improving communication.
Okay, communications, ag literacy, I mean, all of those things, promoting agriculture and developing your leaders. Your students that are participating, it's communication skills. They're learning to advocate for agriculture, tell the story of ag. Does that help? That's a pretty basic one. In the handbook, there are specific examples for each one. And she tried to get as many as she could. She surveyed staff, teachers, programs, all types of people trying to get ideas. So there are pages in the handbook of exact examples harvested from other old applications as well as new ideas for each one of these. That's that 35-page document I told you about. So you still have a photo. And again, if your students are using ADT to its full potential, they're using the app and they're saving pictures to their accounts, you can go through and harvest pictures out of those accounts. If you're using it to your full potential that I know it offers teachers, you have that same ability to snap pictures of different activities and house it in ADT. Or you can do the old-fashioned, plug in the phone or the digital camera and upload it into the computer. Either way, you can go get your photos there. And then photo captions. Now, honestly, when I was judging, this is my favorite part. I would actually flip to the photo pages first because I just love to see the kids doing things. Now, other people, they start at page 1 and they work systematically through each section until they get to the end. But that was just kind of how I would start. I would flip to the photos, see what was going on, see if what were in the photos actually matched what I was reading later. So that was just my personal way of approaching it. Katie, Jared, what about you? What are photo captions and photos? What are your thoughts there?
I think the photos are very important, like you said, to kind of really tie everything together. One suggestion that I have on the pictures, and we were going to talk about it later, but since you brought it up, we'll just start now. I mean, majority of us have iPhones now, and I know that I'm the world's worst about actually taking the chapter camera with me. I don't carry it. It's just something else I have to bring with us. We did get some tips on how to use your camera properly for this application. For those of you that have not done an application on AET, if you take your pictures this way, it only takes up half the space on the page and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't crop it, you can't move it, you can't do anything. So make sure that when you're taking pictures of your kids, you turn your phone this way. Now another thing, you could tell which ones were cell phone pictures and which ones were actual camera pictures. But here, there is a way for our smartphones that you can make a phone picture look like the camera picture. And I'll just walk you through it right now. If you'll open up your camera. Okay, and you have that black line up here on the top, and there's like the flash, the HDR, and there's several different things on there. If you will turn that HDR on, when you take those pictures, it saves them as a bigger document, and it takes a sharper picture. So you'll notice when you go take the picture, it'll have kind of a delay. It's not as quick as if you were just snapping a picture really fast, and it does take more space on your phone. So make sure that you turn that off when you're done taking pictures of the activity. If not, all the other pictures, it fills it very fast. So my tip to you is take your pictures this way with your phone, turn on the HDR, and make sure that you hold your camera really still whenever you take them, because if you're trying to move and take multiples, you can't take like action photos with that very easy at all. Oh, and make sure that you see their faces on those pictures.
like having their backs where they're like bent over table writing or something, like that doesn't do us any good to see the actual activity. So make sure that they are good pictures.
So are you saying like a pose picture versus an action shot would be better?
Well,
I don't think so.
No.
I like the action shots. And I
just
just,
make sure that you're not, that all their backs are to them, like get on the other side of them or something of that nature. Yes, action shots are so much better than everybody posing in front of a sign. But I know like we had an activity that we couldn't take pictures inside. And you explain that in your caption. If there's a spot that you can't take pictures inside for whatever reason, like you're volunteering somewhere and they don't want pictures in the nursing home or the children's hospital, wherever you're at, make sure that you put that. There were no pictures allowed inside, but here's what we did at the activity with these students.
and that's a good point about using the caption to explain more than what's in the photo. And don't necessarily just repeat what was in the application in the caption. You've got the opportunity, the students have the opportunity to explain more about what's going on in the activity that they might not have been able to put in the application somewhere. So think about helping them understand how to use that creatively. So, you know, and not having if they're at a table, get down under them and take the photo up. I mean, you guys take a picture of your kids all the time. You can do the same thing with your students. It's amazing what I see photography-wise on Facebook and things from people that have no photography skills whatsoever. So be creative in that. Have that chapter reporter getting up and underneath them if they're the one taking it, or if you're doing it, be creative with how you can get those action shots. But use the caption piece to tell more of the story, just like you do with proficiencies. Y'all are used to doing it in proficiencies where you've got the kid with their animal or whatever they're doing, and you've got all this stuff in the application. Here's your opportunity to explain more about what's going on than just what's in the picture. So, any other questions about photos?
Hey, Nina?
Yes.
Real quick, on the related to quality standards, and you don't have to cover it now, but I doubt if very many of them really know what you're talking about on the program quality standards, maybe where they can find them.
Okay, well, that was back on the Form 1.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not there yet, so we'll just go right here. Your indicators, this is that screen right here. If you wanted them listed out, if you like what you're doing like I do, that's what. So how is that activity related to one of these quality standards?
Okay.
And it's okay if it's related, if they're nearly all of them related to the same one, okay? That's all right. But if you were having a recruitment activity, so, you know, the officers, the committee chairs are having some activity and they're trying to recruit 8th graders into the program for the next year, which quality standard is that going to fit under? Jared said 13, real quiet, so nobody can hear us up here. Is there any others you want to get to?
Number 2.
Number 2, progressive leadership personal development plans. It could be part of their plan, yes. So it could hit multiple ones, and that's okay too. But in that section on the application on Form 2, under that goal, how does it relate to the quality standard? That's what Kurt was talking about.
You're gonna pick that quality standard, it's got the wording up there, right?
Yes. Sorry, let me slide back up.
Some of the worst thing judging was when people would not choose those correctly, and that puts you in a bad spot as a judge. Do you still use that? Do you still go through and get max points because somebody puts something under healthy lifestyles that doesn't fit? But we know how it goes. I did these 5 activities, but I really want to use this one, but I already used this other one in personal growth, but I'm going to squeeze this one into this activity. And if you try to do that, at least use some of National FFA's verbiage that they already give you. Like on your description, say, this personal growth activity was conducted, and then maybe use a few words out of that description. We created self-awareness. We helped with employability skills. Something that's actually in that description, reusing those words in your activity description, and you say, oh, well, yeah, I guess that does fit. Because immediately we look at the title, and then you look at does it fit within that quality standard. Now, with the new application, you have more room at the bottom to actually describe that quality standard area. So that's probably a bigger deal than I thought it was, because I would try to do that. Well, I'll just try to squeeze this into personal growth because I really don't have anywhere else to put it. Try to make sure you have activities that fit, because that was some discussion at our table. I might be looking at one and say, this is a pretty cool activity, but it doesn't fit in this area. What do you think we should do? And you kind of end up taking off some points throughout the activity just because it never fit from the very beginning. So kind of watch that and be looking at the rubric as you're going along with that. And that'll kind of help you. There's some of that as well.
Let me pull up that rubric real quick. So on the National Chapter page of FFA.org, again, you've got all these rubrics. This is where I'll pull up that one. Real easy PDFs to print off for the students as they're going through, but we tried to make it as clear as we could for the students as they're filling this out, which way, what needs to be in that. So in activity description, you'll see there, when we went over the little question mark, that's what popped up on that left side. So as they're judging at the table, they're sitting there with the rubric and the application. They're side by side. And, you know, on day 3, you don't need it quite as much as you did on day 1, because now you've got it burned on your brain. But they're looking at each one. So this is how they decide, 2 points, 1 point, or 0 point. And then different sections are weighted. So that's where the 5 points right here times 2.5. You'll notice goals are not weighted. It's just a straight 3 points. So let's talk about goals real quick. And we've got a handout. I'll let you jump in.
So one thing that we kind of noticed even here at the state level is that maybe it's not 100% clear how to write a SMART goal. So this is very basic and simple what she's passing out to you. Obviously at the top I spelled out what SMART stands for. Okay, you're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. You need to be able to answer like, who is involved, what are you trying to accomplish, identify a location, establish a time frame, identify requirements, and just be very specific. One of the biggest key points that, I don't think I gave a whole lot of full points on goals because there was always 2 main things missing. We didn't know where it was happening or when it was happening. There was no time element ever. And when you're in that room and they give you that, you got to get 60 applications done today, you need it to jump out at you. So like at the bottom, there's some examples like what we would have given 1 point for on a goal, what we would give 2 points for on a goal, and what we'd give full points for on a goal. On the 4 points, I want you, like on the last goal, where it says 7 senior officers. Oh, by the way, this is Miss Carolyn McGay's goal from one of her models of innovation. Give her credit for letting me borrow it. But see how it, like, we all know that there's 6 to 9 officers on everybody's team typically. Like, we know that there's a number. So really, if you put officers, like that's a measurable amount. But again, our brain is mush by day 3 or 4. We need to see it. It needs to pop out, okay? I would even suggest, and I know it's like grammatically we kind of talked about throwing it around up here. It's not always right, but I would suggest putting the number. Just put number 7, the number 7, the number 10, 22, instead of spelling it out. Since you are held to a word count now as well, but also it helps, like we're gonna see it. Oh, you can measure it, okay? And then on the time element, like being very specific, you can even say like in the fall semester or before school starts or something of that nature for us to be able to understand like when you're looking at it, because how it was explained to me whenever I started doing these applications is that somebody should be able to take your event and apply it to what they're doing. So if you don't know if they're doing it in the spring or the fall or in the summer, like when are they prepping for that? That's kind of how I look at it. So any questions on the goals?
I like that it's a recipe. So if you kind of, I said, have somebody that doesn't know about your activities, your program, read it, see if it makes sense, and they get the, if they could follow the recipe to create that event through the page on this application, that's perfect example of how thorough it needs to be in the descriptions. And those goals, I found that that's usually where applications lost the most points, I found.
Yeah, because it would just be like, have the officers have a planning meeting or something, and it was very vague, like we didn't understand exactly what they were trying to do. So if there's, I mean, just the more details you can pile in there, the more information you're gonna be able to give to those judges in that 2 minutes if they have to look at that section of the application.
And Jenna gave some really good examples of ones that she saw. And I didn't go through the top. I explained what she did to look at some applications. I should have gone through that first. She went through and pulled applications for Oklahoma specifically that were 3 stars in 14, but 2 stars in 16. And then she went through and randomly pulled 4 of those out of 15. There were 15 chapters that fit that bill. She pulled 4 of them and just went through and looked at them and pulled out these suggestions. So if you look under goals part, again, stressing that they have to be the SMART goals and helping our students make sure they're writing them appropriately. And this not only helps them fill out this application, it'll help them fill out proficiency applications, it'll help them fill out everything in life if they can figure out how to do that appropriately. But looking at the first one, chapter page must be used to inform others of current events happening. So how many times, when will it be accomplished, how will you know you were successful when you're done? Those are the things that need to be in there that make it real easy for a judge to roll through and give you all your points and move on to the next section. I'll say that if I get to that section and things are starting to be missing, then I'm going to start really looking at the application and really looking for point deductions, because that's just the natural tendency you have when you're judging. If I can roll through and check boxes and I can give scores real quickly, I'm moving on. But the second I start spending time looking for things is when points start getting taken off. The second one, when your officer team's going to purchase a gift for children at the homeless shelter. By when? For Christmas? For New Year's? For birthdays? I mean, you got to give us a time frame when that's going to happen. And you're right. That's usually the one thing that was typically missing when you judge this section is a time frame.
3 words.
Yeah, and don't just assume that because it's in the school year. Don't make that assumption. Somebody who's reading doesn't know that. Yes, sir.
Would you recommend highlight, bold, underline,
Can't do that in the
italicize?
application.
Okay.
It won't allow it.
Okay.
Another thing is, like in this one where it says evaluate, use those types of words. Whenever we had to write all those wonderful lesson plans in college where we had to use all those, the hots and lots, I use that list when I write these. So like I wrote down some that I would see in the applications, like using the word recruit, provide, promote, expose, evaluate. Use those words to catch your attention. There's a lot of applications don't use those words. And they're very powerful to explain what you're doing.
Bloom's taxonomy, y'all. You thought it'd never come back, right? Those are the action verbs that need to be there. She's exactly right. And you Google Bloom's taxonomy and print them off. They got sheets of them that list them. So it's real easy to hand to the students and say, write using these verbs. And that'll help as well. But yeah, good point on should you bold, underline. Yeah, the new application, web-based, it doesn't allow you, not that Excel, you can bold in Excel. I think there are a few teachers to figure out how to underline. But now that you've broken it out into each individual goal, it's not as hard to find things. And it's going to print like that. So it won't be near as hard as it was when you had to cram 4 into one space and you were trying to divide it out and not take up too much space. So that's the goal. Any other questions?
So now we don't have to do the 1.1, 1.2,
No,
1.3.
they're all separated out. You've got goal 1 and everything right there. See the number 1 over there on the right? Right here. And so when student slides it down, now it's goal 2. So it'll print like that, so everything's sectioned together. So there's no more trying to separate it out. Yes, some teachers I do remember looking at it, 1.1 and 1. Trying to keep it all together so that the reader could find things quickly. We tried to make it a little easier on you. Now, I didn't point this out, but on the evaluation, the students actually get to tell us right up front, did they meet the goal, or did they not meet it, or did they exceed their expectation? Okay, so that's really nice. So you don't even have to take up a paragraph down telling us that.
Okay, as judges, when y'all did that, did it matter to you whether it was exceeded or met?
It didn't matter to me if it was unmet. as long as if you explained why it didn't meet. So you said our goal was to have 60 kids participate in this event, and we only had 45, and they said unmet because the basketball tournament came up and took half my kids, then they explained it. Yeah, like I understood, like, oh, well, they may have done that, like, I understand. That's just my opinion.
I would rather retroactively adjust the goal, but.
My question, did you actually have some 3 stars that had unmet?
I didn't read the application, so I don't know.
I'm sure there are plenty of them. Everybody kind of has you come in from your state with a little bit of what you think needs to be done or not done, and you kind of have to put some of that aside. And I don't like the unmet if it's used more than about once in an application, because what I ran across on several of them was, I would just be judging, one specific area like student development. So you read the same types of things over and over, but then you get one application, it goes unmet because we had whatever bad weather, and kids couldn't get there, and you go, okay, that's not too bad. And you flip over to the next one, and that one's unmet. And then I'm like, no, that's an issue. So I personally would start deducting just a little bit, not necessarily in that specific area, but just kind of overall, because it kind of set a pattern of, and I would start looking through the rest of the application. There's another unmet, there's another unmet. So, I mean, one of them's not that big a deal because this happened, but if it's a continuous thing, I don't think it's good. I probably wouldn't use several different activities that didn't meet or exceed, but meet or exceed, that doesn't matter at all. But from National FFA standpoint, they just tell you if it's unmet and they explain it, you can still get full points. So that's not too big of a deal.
I got here kind of late, but did you guys already talk about how basically the whole format has changed, not just the physical application, but instead of having the divisions like we used to have?
Yes, we did that.
Yes, covered that, great.
We're gonna post this PowerPoint, correct? So they'll have access to it, so you'll be able to see it. I highlighted the things that have changed that were different, the divisions and the indicators. I was gonna look on the rubric, you'll notice it doesn't say, did they meet or exceed the goals? That's not part of the actual scoring. But Jared's right, our natural tendency when we're reading, if we start finding too many of those, then we start questioning. And I would say it's probably not gonna be a 3-star if there's more than 2 for sure.
Does it
met
talk,
goals.
Nina, does it talk about, doesn't say met or not met during the goal, but does it talk about it in the results section of the rubric?
Which is just one point. It says if unmet, what are the circumstances?
Yeah, the reasoning behind why. But for one goal, it's 1 point. But you start adding it up, and it can be 1 or 2 point difference between a 3-star and a 4-star. So those are definitely things that will come into play in the long-term overall totals for that application.
The point that's coming here is worth more than a point in the past, because the whole application is 50 points per activity now. That's something different too, that where it used to be 60. So that's going to be a little bit of an issue when the judges come in this summer, because they may have, you typically think of, well, I would take off a point last year for this, or I would take off a half a point, but it's kind of weighted a little different because it's out of 50 points total instead of out of 60. So losing a point or a half a point somewhere now starts to really add up, because if it was on the top of this one where the 3-star range is now 360 to 450, that is very important. When you start doing, if you've got 9 different activities, you have to average 40 or better out of 50 on your activities to be able to be 3-star. So if you start going through and it's a half point here and a point here and a half point, you start doing that in every little area, times the factor there on that one on your description is what, times 2.5 or something. So you're looking at a lot of points, but they're just right off the bat in your activity description. But if you start losing, they give you 3.5 out of 5, or what now? Yeah, 0.5 for 5. So but then you start adding that up all the way through, before you know it, you've lost 12 or 14 points on a decent activity.
So that the activities are now only worth 50 points?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they didn't change the standard up there?
They changed the weighting of different pieces.
Yeah, it's still changed because your 9 would be, your 9 would be 450. I mean, perfect score, 50 on each one on your 9 activities would be 450.
But what was it in the past?
Well, you had 60 on each, I don't remember what the cutoff was.
It was still 360 was the cutoff.
Was it?
Yeah. Wasn't it?
Sorry, can't do math in my head. Right here.
60 times 9 is 5.
Actually, 40 would be 5 points, doesn't say times 2.5.
So this is the score sheet that the judge fills out for each application. So they have the rubric, they can do that individually, and then they can go back and they record everything on one page to make it easy to add in quickly. So, activity description. Yeah, I think we just found an error. Thank you. Because this isn't matching
Yeah, that's
here.
just, now that's just showing like if you gave 2 points on that rubric times 2.5, is that what it's saying?
Yeah, it should be weighted. So if I gave a 1, it'd be 2.5.
Saying if they rated it high, they give them a 2 and then multiply it. So it'd actually be 5.
Right. Okay, all right.
What is weird on that
But
rubric?
I still, it's totally correct.
Let me ask
I'm
you,
gonna have to verify
four
that.
activities,
Yeah.
4 times 5 is 20, times 2.5 is 50. Right?
On all your activities.
You got 2 of them.
9 activities total, but
Overall total is 450. So this should say 360. But the maximum you get is 450. Okay. Making a note for Jenna.
But you still do the 15 on the front end and the 59 highlighted ones of those.
Yes. All right. So I made myself a note to tell Jenna that that top piece is incorrect. Thanks for getting that. I hadn't noticed it as many times as I've looked at it already. So we were on goals. Any other questions about goals before we advance? Okay, so let's look at plans of action. And Jenna's got one example here. The weaker plans don't have the who, where, what, when, and how. So if you're leaving out any of those pieces on your plan of action, then that's gonna knock the points down. And I think probably that's what we need to stress to our students as they're filling that out. Again, this is off of the rubric. They need to answer all of these questions in that section. So 400 characters to do that. That seems like a lot when you say 400, but when a student starts typing, that's going to go really quick. So they need to make sure that they're hitting those specifically. And again, we've broken them out one goal at a time, so they're not trying to cram 4 into one box anymore. So hopefully that 400 character count will be good for that. The example she said, what's happening? How will it be done? In all students being a CDE, that's great. Well, great goal to have, but that doesn't really answer any of those questions that need to be in that description. That one's probably a little easier than goals, perhaps, I think.
Nina,
Yes, sir.
maybe the ones the judge could answer this. In the past, we've told teachers to parenthesize the who, what, where, when, how in the plan of action to maybe have it jump out. Is that still what you need to do? Is it not what you want to do?
I don't know. I personally don't like it. I kind of tried to quiz people. We would get done that evening or something. I would go around, talk to different ag teachers or people that were judging and ask them. And it was kind of just all over, both ways, either way, anyway. I don't like it because I read, and then it's like, the chapter FFA president who, it just messes up my flow. You know, the chapter FFA president who went to contact the superintendent on July 4th when, and it just, to me, I don't like it, but a lot of people did because they could kind of do the check mark, but I just feel like I'm smart enough to know if you're missing who, what, when, where, why, how, and I could figure that out by reading a sentence form, but I never found a consistent message from people there that were saying we do like this or we don't like this, and I didn't score them any differently either way, but in terms of me, the way my mind works, I like looking at it and just reading it and understanding what's going on, and sometimes it would be too choppy and I'd have to look back and then reread it. So I'm really not 100% on that.
Katie, what's your thoughts on that?
I agree with him that it was very hard to understand. I have to read it multiple times, and again, we run out of time to keep reading it, and then if we also, and sometimes they would throw it in where it's not supposed to be. And so then you're like, okay, so I've got to check to make sure they really do have a what or something of that nature. I also think the way the application is going to be set up now, that it's just going to flow better instead of trying to cram everything into that one box and not being able to space it out. I don't know. I'm on the judging side of it. I was not a fan of putting the parentheses and trying to understand fully what they did.
Is this going to be where you could have the heading of who and then type out that part of that plan of action and have a hard carriage return and then put what? At one time we kind of, before they switched to 4 goals, we were doing that within the Excel deal.
But see, to me, I'm a linear person, so I want to see kind of beginning to end what happened, or you know what I mean? Not necessarily, to me it gets too choppy like that, but that's just personal, the way my brain works. I like just seeing, we started here, we did this, this, and this, then this person did this on this date, and went and talked to this person and coordinated with this one, and it kind of just flows.
You're saying maybe use it when you're writing it and then take it back out once you know it's all there, because as a teacher, I would use it so I'd make sure that I had
Did
that.
you hit those points, yeah?
Again, if it's written well, if you're writing a quality application and it's going to flow better, if you're writing choppy sentences anyway, it's still going to be kind of hard to follow, if that makes sense. Like just having a very, again, using those words to kind of catch your attention and making it flow really good and sound kind of scholarly, making those edits, I think that'll help in general.
Without just, I think the biggest thing I saw was sometimes people just making stuff up to try to fill the box. And actually, you're better off getting your point across and moving on, even if you've got an extra line there. If you absolutely can't fill it up, just move on. Because sometimes there's just extra junk in there you get that has no real bearing on what you're doing or what you're talking about. So just write it in a way that describes what you're doing and move on, because literally they were pushing us to judge faster, faster, more of them, more of them. And, we had some tables that were probably going to go too fast to try to see if they could go faster than other tables. And they wanted us to judge, and basically you start breaking it down. It was about 2.5 minutes per activity. So 2.5 minutes to judge an activity is really, really short. Like I can barely read through the activity, let alone dwell on it, think about it, what's its score. So it's got to be, here's the description, 3.5. Here's the go, 1, 2. Here's the go, 2, 3. You know, and
that's what I
reading it,
thought,
scoring it,
that's what we had been led to believe, that it was important to do the who, what, when, where, because they weren't reading it choppy or otherwise. They were just looking for those things and then go, yep, they got it all.
There was some that judged like that. I mean, I talked to one of them that judged Oklahoma's that I was quizzing him that night. And I asked him specifically, well, do you like these better than these? He said it really didn't matter. It was just, you can tell if they're well written. And that's pretty much the thing. It's kind of like judging a speech contest. You're not waiting until the kid gets completely done with their speech before you kind of have them in a range. When you read the first description and activity on there and get to that first goal, you've already kind of got an idea in your mind of this is a pretty good one or this one's pretty average. And that's the same thing with choosing your activities.
I am a little bit on the opposite venue. When I graded at Nationals, we are so tough on time, and you've got everybody grading, and you don't know if they're linear or if they read for thought, and they're cramming your apps. And I'm trying to go to make sure I get the full points. It's real hard for them not to give me full points if it's all set out there. Now, I understand it breaks up that reading concept, but they don't have time to read it for content. It's you're pushed so hard, and we are usually graded kind of end of the week. And so we get slammed on people being tired of reading. And so it does break up that a little bit, but it's real hard to grade somebody down when that stuff's all set apart.
Well,
That's my point. That's my opinion.
That's why I quizzed a lot of other people, and they were probably split right down the middle on either way. Kind of like it this way, but if it's this way and it's written well, it doesn't matter. So
That's the deal, you don't know what you're, and that's just part of it,
Yep.
we teach our kids too. You don't know what you're gonna get that day. So I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer for this. Now, my only concern, and I don't know if it will mess anything, but how you were saying like the who and then type it out, the what and type it out. How's that gonna print out? How's your application gonna print out through AET that way?
I know,
Because is it gonna
in the resume, it's a character count, and if you card carriage return, it doesn't count but one character for that. And you can, like on our state degree resumes, you can go to 3 or 4 pages on it.
Right. So it seems like I then maybe just my OCD-ness, but if that's supposed to fit on one page, and then I roll it over because I spaced it out, and it rolls over and it's got this much on the second page and then all white.
Proficiency awards in that AET application his might be 13 pages, mine might be 22.
Right. I don't know if that'll make a difference. That was just something I thought of whenever you.
Yeah, I haven't printed one off in the new one, so I'm not sure. I was thinking the same thing. I don't know how that affects the printing. So whichever way you decide to do it, print your test copy, of course. See
Oh,
what
yeah.
it looks like. And you may, instead of hard returning, you may have to, do it the old school like we did in Excel, and then skip over a couple of spaces and do the, like that. To get it print right. I don't know, but I do warn you, you're wasting character counts.
That's just what I was thinking.
That you don't need.
You're looking at probably 25 to 50 characters to
Yeah.
put those in,
And
probably.
Sometimes maybe you need those, to fill up some space, because kids don't write as good as they'd like them to sometimes. But yeah, you got a definite 50-50 split, because I'm with you. I like it laid out who, what, where, when, so I go through real fast and move on. And you got 2 who don't, so it's 50-50 right there with 4 judges who've done it before. So that's probably exactly right, Jared. In the room, you've got about 50% of the people who like it that way and 50 who don't. The thing that's the hardest about judging is being consistent from start to finish. If I'm consistent as a judge all the way from start to finish, it doesn't matter what style of judging I like. It's all going to come out in the wash. If Jared's consistent, if we're all in that room, we're consistent from start to finish. The problem is when we get tired, our consistency goes down.
When y'all are judging, do y'all start on A the very first day and go to?
Honestly, I did proficiencies, and I started with the short files first, so I could get them done. That was the national chapter ones.
Well, they have it spread out. We
They put
didn't
them on
choose.
a table.
And I think year before last, this first time, everything got judged twice. And they had them spread out on tables all around, and they were just stacked, from A to Z. And they would just bring our table. Here, you're going to do Missouri's. There might be 35 there, but the next table is going to get 6 small states before I get done with Missouri. So one thing that it didn't really matter. Everybody was going to do pretty much an equal amount of judging. And that's what happened. A couple of tables got ahead, and they got to be done a little bit early one evening. But it didn't matter. You had to judge them all a certain number for each table, for each individual person, no matter what. And they kind of had that number divided out. But if you're going to judge every one of them twice, you got to judge about this number. And so you kind of knew where you were at, and you just kind of pace yourself.
Well, and I know it's important to make sure you understand that every application is looked by 2 people minimum. Now, if I know the year I did it, if there was a score sheet, and you look at the score sheets side by side, and if there was a huge discrepancy between the scores of those two judges, then a third person judged it. That's the year I did. I don't know if they've done that this
Yeah,
last year.
Jenna or somebody. would come
Somebody,
back.
if there was a huge discrepancy, let's say 20, 30 point difference, then obviously my style of judging and somebody else may not be judging correctly, so they're gonna have a third person look at it. Then, when the stack is placed, and you're looking at models of innovation, there's a third table, there's a head table of teachers and state staff that have been doing this for a while, who go through and review them. And I don't know about on national chapter, and models of innovation is probably the same way it was on proficiencies. If they don't agree, they'll ask the table to rejudge. And so you'll go back through those models of innovations and say, okay, why we saw something you didn't, maybe there's two more that need to be bumped in there or to be considered. You know, they'll adjust it because it is a very subjective process, and they don't want kids in chapters to miss out that should. Okay. So know that it's not just a one and done type thing. Whatever I judge is law. That's not the way it works. They're going to try to be consistent with those scores to make sure that there's not somebody getting a hard break because it's the end of the week compared to somebody who was judged at the beginning of it. Does that make sense?
Nina?
Yes.
I think too, the point, I've judged there too, I think the point that we could all agree on here is, guys, very quick, whether I use the terminology of who, what, when, where, or whatever, or I write it just in essay form to where it's, like Jared says, it's an easier read. The most important thing I think that we find out that you make sure that you cover all of those areas and that it is not so vague that the judge has to look for it or go back and try to find it. It needs to jump out the page and say, this is how it reads. Write it to that stuff, simplistic point to where I'm going to gather my points. Force them to judge and to gather all of my points. I will assure you, when I judged, if I had to go look on the third day and I had to really search, I'll bet you didn't get all the points. My point is, force a judge to evaluate that by giving you all the points, regardless of how you write it, by answering all the questions, and don't hide it or make it vague. Like, for instance, if I said I'm going to do remediation work, guys, that doesn't answer the question. If our chapter decided to do reading mediation during the month of April, think of all the questions that answers all of a sudden, how it's just written. But I think the big point is, guys, regardless of how you do it, make sure that it is written that you mandate that they give you all the points.
It's a good point. If it's all there, that's the only way you can score it. On results and outcomes at the bottom, the last piece of each goal or each item activity, Jenna on her page, she's got a pretty good paragraph on the back side of that. I'm not going to read it to you, but what jumped out to me whenever I read through it, first of all, that this section is 22 points, that's 35% of the overall score. So you need to make sure you get this section correct. And the fact that it's divided out by goals will help with that, as opposed to trying to cram them all in one space like all the other pieces. So hopefully that's going to be a much easier to do. But really make sure this is well written so the judges don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out, did they meet it or not meet it? Because you're going to do the check box, that's going to be great. But obviously the writing in the center needs to document that you did all those things in the SMART goal that you said you were going to do. So I thought that was really important since you pointed that piece out.
According to the results, the old application at the top was 540, because it says out of 60, so that'd be, and now it's just 450, so it's actually down 90 points.
What we were talking about a little bit ago with the numbers. But of course, you know, with our students, I think that, I know I fell short as a teacher a lot of times evaluating activities. It wasn't good. You know, my usual thing was, well, did we make money? Did everybody have fun? You know, that was my form of evaluation. I was not near as organized as I probably should have been. That's why I never ended up at Models of Innovation. This part is really important in the business world. Anytime an adult is doing something, they're evaluated on it. And I don't think we stress that enough with our students. And that's some of the premise behind this being worth so much, is that we need to teach our students to reflect and evaluate things more thoroughly, because that's what they're going to be expected to do in the business world when they get out. So know that each piece of these has a very targeted reason why it's important, not just because we want to be recognized as a great chapter, but because you're trying to teach the kids these skills as they go along. We're starting to run out of time. I want to go back. What do you think? You may or may not know that now, starting, well, it was actually 2015 we did it for the first time, you can get feedback on your application. So on the certification page, you go back to that and look, and you can do that now. If you did last year's application, if you judged in Indianapolis, you can go get the results. This is what it looks like. I didn't have enough coloring to print everybody a copy. But if you want to look at it on break, you can. But it will give you the bar type of a graph of your chapter application scoring performance versus all of Oklahoma versus all of the U.S. So you can kind of compare where you fell in that. So you just randomly pulled an Oklahoma chapter, and I widened it out so you don't know who it is. But you can see from the graphs how your application performed compared to those other two groups. So I just wanted to point that out. It summarizes all 9 activities, and it's 90 scores for the first one for goals. That would be a summary of 90 scores total. So that mathematically can kind of just give you a visual representation of where you fall. I don't think enough people know that that's there. We've had it for agri science for a few more years, and we've had it with national chapter. Jenna was great to get it up for national chapter as well. Looking forward, not a lot of changes. You guys still get 10% of your chapters. That number is pretty consistent for you all. Award areas, pretty much the same. We'll have 3, 2, 1. We'll have the premier chapters in each one of the divisions. We'll have models of excellence in both middle school and high school. So not a lot of changes in the overall award system piece. We already looked at the application managers housed by our vendor AET. If they're smart people, they make all of their data flow. So if you haven't checked out their POA tool, it might be a great thing. Again, you can assign specific students to work on it. It flows into the application. Each item has its own scoring, no bolding, no underlining we talked about, no changing text colors. I told you be sure that you don't have more than one student working on a page at a time because the system doesn't know which one to listen to. You've got your character counts. Make sure it exports into a PDF document, but you can always go back into the web and alter it if something's not right. And to point out, online application does not mean online submission yet. We're going to get there. Eventually we'll have online submission and online judging. That's my goal. That's my hope for the next 4 or 5 years that we'll finally get there. But we're not there yet. We're still printing it off and sending it to us, and we're bringing everybody in July and putting eyes on the paper. Questions about all that? Looking for, oh, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. We already did that. Oh, this is the one I want to talk about. The big deductions, okay? These are the ones that are going to knock you out for sure. First and foremost, replication of any activity. And I don't care that you give it a different name. If it reads the same activity, you're getting an automatic 25 deduction, plus you're losing all the points probably on the activity itself as the judge reads through the second time. So know that that's a huge one. Anything out of activity date range. So this is going to be based on the cover page. You're going to tell us what the year is on the application. So you're going to set your dates right here. Luckily now, with this web base, you can't force it to do a date that's wrong. It's kind of like the proficiencies, you know, we would constantly, or in American Degrees, constantly get records for the year after it was done. And so now the application doesn't let you do that. So that's a nice thing. But you're going to set your dates on that cover page, and it's going to keep you to that through there. So hopefully that'll keep you from losing points with that.
Nina, what's your recommendation on dates? See if it's what we've been telling them.
Well, Jenna's really the one to ask that because she's the one that runs. I know what I think, and I always did, but it may not have been right. So we need to make sure, get that clarified from Jenna on exactly what that date range needs to be. I always went with when is your application judged in the state level. So when do you judge them here?
They're due June.
June 1? Okay, that works too, so that makes it easy. So our year ran from June 1
Through May 31st.
to May 31. But now let's make sure Jenna clarifies that and let the teachers know, because I don't want to give you misinformation according to how I operate. Multiple activities in the same item. So Jared talked about trying to cram things in because you want to get it all in there. Make sure that you're not writing for multiple things. And I know sometimes we do an activity and we try to like accomplish 2 or 3 things at the same time, don't we? But when the students are writing it, make sure that they're dividing them out. And the example she used that was really easy to follow was lumping all of your leadership conferences into one thing. You know, you're going to try to cover national convention attendance, 212, 360, Made for Excellence, all those things that we do. No, that's not right. One activity. So you're going to focus on Made for Excellence here. That's going to be the activity that you're going to talk about in the description. You're going to have your students really focus on that one. It's great they did all those other things, but from a judging standpoint, how do you write SMART goals for 5 different activities in one application? So you got to remember that. And then I had to ask, because I was on the collaborative activity replication, because I couldn't put my mind around that. What her example she used, so if you've got a middle school and a high school chapter, because we do have those in this country, they're the same school district, but they've got 2 separate chapters, but they do an activity together. I said don't write that one. Okay, one of them owns it and is responsible for it. So if they're doing that activity together, if you want to, let's use 2 chapters doing the same activity together. Probably that could happen around here. You only need to write your application for the pieces you're responsible for. So if you and your school down the road, you guys partner on, I don't know, what would be something y'all would partner on? Invitational Livestock Show. So you're partnering on the Invitational Livestock Show. Your students need to write the activity for only the parts they were responsible for. They don't need to write about the whole activity that the other chapter helped them with. Okay? So does that make sense? Yeah. So I had to ask for clarification exactly. So those are the ones that will lose you 25 points in the blink of an eye. And you know that could be the difference between 3-star, 2-star, or 1-star, 2-star, or no star. So just know that that's a huge piece. The real person to talk to, ask about the time frame, especially Jenna Jensen. You can call her, you can email her anytime. Okay? If you have a question and you just something's not right, you don't know what to do with it, whatever. She is so wonderful to answer the phone, to answer emails. Now there are busy times of the year. Don't try to call her in July. It's kind of crazy. Just, you know, she may not get back to you as fast as you would like if you call her in July. But she's our education specialist in charge of this program and has all of the answers. She knows it intimately. She works with it every day. I'm your second call. If you can't get a hold of her, get a hold of me. If I don't know the answer, then I'll probably track Jenna down. I have a few more numbers than we provide publicly that I can get a hold of her at. And of course, your state staff, anytime, always helpful. All right, so we have 10 minutes left. Time for questions. Jack, anything else you want to throw in there?
I have one more thing down over here.
Fantastic, go for it.
On activities, something that we saw, I think we both judged chapter at the national level, and we had to judge 180 applications through the whole thing, and probably out of 180 of them, 120 of them talked about fundraising. Fruit sales here in Oklahoma talked about blue and gold sales in all of the chapter in the chapter section. If you're going to put fundraising, in my opinion, I shouldn't say our, but my opinion, just saying we're going to raise money for the chapter is not a high scoring activity. If you are teaching kids ways to manage money or how they're applying the money to kind of what they're doing in the chapter, but just saying we're going to fundraise, we're going to sell 100 sticks of sausage. when I would see that, when I see a fruit cell come across, I was like, good Lord, here we go again. It's the same stuff over and over again. There was nothing innovative, like, and I'm not saying everything has to be like, you know, you're creating something brand new, but with the fundraising, that was a collective, everybody kind of agreed. That's not a very strong activity. Another one that we would see here at the state level, and I'm not trying to like, I'm not calling anybody out, but we just want to help you guys make better applications. There was some that an activity was every kid has an SAE. That's not an activity, that's part of the program. I mean, in my opinion, it's kind of our job. So make sure that, you know, if you're doing an SAE workshop or something of that nature, but just saying, like one of the goals being every kid in our chapter has an SAE, or 80% of our kids have an SAE, that's not a very good activity. So maybe evaluating some of those activities and what you put in there, it'll just make your application stronger and give you a better chance of moving on to the top 36 in the state.
And you point out too that we're left off as indicators for that exact reason, I think, by the committees as they went through. We know every chapter has a fundraise, and it's not that can't be laced into one of these, but it shouldn't be the goal. It shouldn't be one of your SMART goals. You know, you should be teaching finance. It should be communications. It should be marketing. Those should be the goals that are associated with it, and not that SAE. Every kid's supposed to have an SAE, but we got so many that were written like that. That was part, I think, of the reasoning why the committee chose to take those off as indicators, because they were just getting the same thing all the time, every time. Yes, ma'am.
Does it hurt if an activity takes place majority during the school day rather than an outside activity?
Nope, there's nothing in here that says they can't. Now, it might be a philosophical bend somewhere along the way at the state level that might be an issue, but it's not, it's national level. Other questions? Well, I thank you all for your time this morning. I'll be hanging around through lunch probably. If you've got questions, something specific you want to talk about, be glad to, and I'm sure you're other. Yes.
What is an example of a strengthened agriculture support group?
It could be your booster club, it could be your alumni, it could be the Cattlemen's Association, whoever your support group is. We, of course, would love for it to be alumni, but we know that's not always possible or doable. So anything to relate to a group that supports you, that you're working with and strengthening. Of course, Cattlemen would be great, you're strengthening agriculture right there. Your alumni helping you with ag literacy at the elementary school.
So like for us, we host the Chamber of Commerce banquet every year, and the annual Cattlemen's Association banquet, and the Lions Club luncheon.
Wow, pick one.
And Farm Bureau
Pick
Bureau
one.
deal. But my point is though, which one would tie in best?
Well, the division is strengthening agriculture. That help? I can't give you the yes or no, y'all. Every application is so unique, it's so different. Yes, sir.
The wording on the quality standards. Like you pull it up and say this could include this.
The handbook's got great examples if you're one specific one. Yes, sir.
Where do you find the results, that little bar graph?
Okay.
It's on your FFA dashboard.
Right here. You go to instructional box. You've got declaration of certifications. I don't have any, so it doesn't do me anything to go look at it, but it should be somewhere in that screen with the results, and you should be able to pull that up.
You gotta click on your 2016.
Yeah, because it probably lists, if you've done it multiple years, it's gonna have multiple, you gotta pick the year that you're looking for.
In the future, I mean, this website, AT, it seems like we're gonna be using it more and more. Is there ever gonna be?
Guys, the only thing that's gonna show you on that,
Is there ever gonna be a day when they're together?
AT is a great company, I don't know why they would want to do that.
Well, I mean, you should probably drive.
They're a great vendor, I mean, they're very smart, they provide our applications, and they're smart enough to make all of their records flow
They
into
don't
it.
just provide our application, they make them a monopoly as a private organization.
There are other states that use other programs, so not necessarily. Jack, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, guys, I think 2 or 3 things. Remember, you need to write this thing to where you dictate your points. You know, an example I gave a teacher the other day, we used to open the gate and let all the bears in at one time. You know, where judges looked at them as a group walking in. Maybe they found them, maybe they didn't. Then we started putting them in one at a time, so they had to look at them. It's a little bit the same thing. If you write that application to where you're going to make them gather your points, that becomes very important. I think what Katie said a while ago, the portion of your page, those pictures, I don't care if they just count 1 point. And that's what we look at. Don't kid yourself. They really, in a judge's mind, they count more than that. Quality pictures. You can tell by looking at the application, the ones that all the pictures were taken the last week, or the ones that were taken during the programs going on. Really, really good pictures really counts more points than what it's on that rubric. Use a rubric, and guys, I'll also tell you this, and something I thought of, whether it go on all applications. If you call the national staff and they give you an answer, it's probably good to include your state staff in it, because if the national staff gives you a different answer than what we do, we're going to respect national staff. But I'll tell you, then we need to know to make those changes ourselves. Are you with me? That boils down to whether that be proficiencies or whatever.